control. It only took 38 seconds of one comment for everything to fall apart in the most spectacular way possible. The studio audience had no idea what they were about to witness. The cameras were rolling, the lights were bright, and Joy Behar sat at the table with her co-hosts, ready for what should have been just another interview. But this was not going to be just another interview. Meghan walked onto the set with confidence. The kind of confidence that fills a room before a single word is spoken. She smiled and waved at the audience. They cheered. They clapped. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. But Joy could sense something different in the air. Something tense. Something waiting to explode. "Welcome, welcome," Joy said with a warm smile, gesturing to the empty seat. "Thank you so much for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you here." Meghan settled into her chair, crossing her legs and adjusting her outfit. "Well, I'm happy to be here," she said, though her tone carried an edge that Joy immediately picked up on. The first few questions were standard. Softball questions. Easy questions. The kind you'd expect on daytime television. Joy asked about recent projects, asked about life, asked about adjustments. Meghan answered, but her responses were clipped. Short. Almost dismissive. "So, you've been working on some exciting new projects," Joy began, her tone friendly and open. "Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been focusing on lately?" Meghan shifted in her seat, her expression already tightening. "Well, I've been focusing on a lot of things. Things that actually matter. Things that make a real difference in people's lives." The implication was clear. The jab was obvious. Joy chose to ignore it and pressed forward. "That's wonderful," Joy said, maintaining her warm demeanor. "Our audience would love to hear more about the specific initiatives you're passionate about." "I'm sure they would," Meghan replied, her tone dripping with something that wasn't quite sarcasm, but wasn't far from it either. "But I'm also sure they'd rather hear me talk about drama and controversy, right? Isn't that what really gets the ratings?" Joy's co-hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances again. This was becoming increasingly awkward, and they were only a few minutes into the interview. "Actually," Joy said patiently, "we're genuinely interested in the work you're doing. That's why we invited you here today." Meghan let out a small laugh. "Right, of course, because talk shows are so well known for their deep, meaningful discussions about humanitarian work." The audience was starting to pick up on the tension now. You could feel the collective shift in the room as people realized this wasn't going to be a typical celebrity interview. "So, let's talk about your time in the public eye," Joy said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "You've certainly experienced a unique journey. What's been the most challenging part for you?" Meghan's expression shifted. Her smile faded. "You know what, Joy? I think the most challenging part has been dealing with people who don't understand what it's like to be in my position. I'm people who sit in their comfortable studios and judge without knowing the full story." The audience went quiet. Joy's co-hosts exchanged glances. This was escalating faster than anyone expected. Joy kept her composure. She'd been doing this for years. She knew how to handle difficult guests. "I completely understand that public scrutiny can be incredibly difficult," she said calmly. "But I think what people are curious about is how you navigate those challenges while remaining authentic." "Authentic?" Meghan's voice rose slightly. "That's interesting coming from someone who makes a living talking about other people's lives. What do you know about being authentic when you're reading from a script every single day?" The tension in the studio became thick, heavy. You could feel it pressing down on everyone. Joy maintained her professional demeanor, but her eyes showed a flash of something. Frustration, maybe. Or perhaps just surprise at how quickly this interview was going sideways. "We're having a conversation here," Joy replied, her voice still controlled. "I'm asking questions that I think our audience wants to hear answered. That's what we do on this show. We have conversations." Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Conversations? Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels more like an interrogation. You bring people on here and pretend to be their friend. But really, You're just waiting for them to say something you can use against them. Joy's co-hosts tried to jump in, tried to redirect the conversation, but Meghan was on a roll now. She was unleashing something that had clearly been building up inside her. You want to know the truth? Meghan continued, not waiting for an answer. The truth is that shows like this, hosts like you're part of the problem. You sit here in judgment of everyone else while contributing absolutely nothing meaningful to the world. The audience gasped. Some people looked shocked. Others looked uncomfortable. This was not what they'd come to see. This was not the fun, lighthearted daytime television they were expecting. Joy took a deep breath. She could have fired back. She could have matched Meghan's energy with her own sharp wit, but she didn't. Instead, she chose grace. "I'm sorry you feel that way," Joy said quietly. "But I have to say, I think you're being incredibly unfair. Not just to me, but to everyone who works on this show and everyone sitting in this audience. We invited you here with respect and kindness, and this is how you respond?" Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You want to talk about respect? Let's talk about respect. How about respecting someone's privacy? How about respecting someone's right to live their life without constant commentary and criticism?" "We're literally just talking," Joy said, still seated, still calm. "That's all this is. A conversation. If that's too much for you, then maybe you shouldn't have agreed to come on a talk show." That was the moment. The precise moment when everything completely shattered. Meghan's face turned red. Her hands were shaking. She pointed at Joy with a trembling finger. "How dare you?" Meghan said, her voice now loud enough that the microphones barely needed to pick it up. "How dare you sit there and act like you're some kind of victim in this? You make millions of dollars talking about people like me, judging us, critiquing every single thing we do. And when someone finally pushes back, you act wounded?" Joy stood up now, too. Not in aggression, but in a way that showed she was done being talked down to. "I think you need to take a step back and think about what you're saying right now. You came on this show voluntarily. Nobody forced you to be here. And the way you're speaking to me, to my colleagues, to this audience, it's completely unacceptable." Unacceptable? Meghan's voice hit a new pitch. "I'll tell you what's unacceptable. What's unacceptable is being treated like a circus animal. What's unacceptable is being expected to perform and smile and answer invasive questions just because you have cameras pointed at me." Joy shook her head slowly, her expression a mix of disappointment and disbelief. "Nobody here has treated you like a circus animal. We've treated you with the exact same respect we treat every single guest who sits in that chair. The only person making this uncomfortable is you." "Oh, so now it's my fault?" Meghan's hands were gesturing wildly now. "Of course it's my fault. It's always my fault, isn't it? When things go wrong, when people get upset, it's always the woman who gets blamed." "This has nothing to do with you being a woman," Joy replied firmly. "This has to do with you being rude and hostile for absolutely no reason. I've interviewed hundreds of women on this show, and somehow this is the first time someone has acted like this." Meghan's face flushed deeper. "Maybe it's the first time someone has had the courage to call you out on your nonsense. Maybe everyone else was too scared to tell you the truth." "The truth?" Joy's voice rose slightly for the first time. "What truth? That we run a talk show where we have conversations with interesting people? That's not exactly some big conspiracy, Meghan." The producers were scrambling now. You could see crew members moving in the background. Headsets were being adjusted. Panic was setting in behind the scenes. This was live television. This was happening in real time. And nobody knew how to stop it. Joy's co-hosts tried again to intervene. One of them stood up, placing a gentle hand on Meghan's arm. "Hey, why don't we all just take a breath here and—" Meghan jerked her arm away. "Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Everyone wants a piece of me. Everyone thinks they have the right to grab at me, to demand things from me, to tell me how I should feel and how I should react. Joy had heard enough. She'd given Meghan chance after chance to course correct, to recognize that her behavior was out of line, but it was clear that wasn't going to happen. "I think we need to end this interview," Joy said firmly. "This has gone too far. You're upset, and that's fine, but you don't get to come onto my show and treat people this way." Meghan's eyes went wide. Your show. The arrogance is unbelievable. You think this is about you? You think any of this is about you? "I think you need to leave," Joy said, her voice steady and clear. "I'm asking you, respectfully, to leave the set." The audience sat in stunned silence. This was unprecedented. Guests don't get asked to leave. Not like this. Not in the middle of a live broadcast. But Joy had made her decision, and she was standing by it. Meghan laughed again. That same hollow laugh from earlier. "Oh, you're asking me to leave? That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. You invite someone on, you provoke them, you push their buttons, and then, when they react, you play the victim and kick them off. That's your move, isn't it?" "Nobody provoked you," Joy said, her patience wearing thin. "You walked in here with an attitude from the very first question. I've been nothing but professional and respectful. And you've done nothing but attack me and everyone else here. So, yes, I'm asking you to leave. Now." Meghan grabbed her purse from beside her chair. She was moving now, pacing back and forth on the set like a caged animal. This is what's wrong with media. This is what's wrong with all of you. You can dish it out, but you can't take it. You can criticize and judge all day long, but the second someone stands up to you, you crumble. Joy crossed her arms. "I'm not crumbling. I'm setting a boundary. There's a difference. And frankly, the way you're behaving right now in front of all these people, you should be embarrassed." "Embarrassed?" Meghan's voice cracked slightly. "You want to talk about embarrassment? How about the embarrassment of being dragged through the mud by shows like this every single day? How about the embarrassment of having every aspect of your life dissected and analyzed by strangers?" One of the producers finally stepped onto the set. A rare move. Producers usually stay behind the cameras, but this situation had spiraled so far beyond control that intervention was necessary. The producer approached Meghan carefully, speaking in a low voice that the microphones couldn't quite catch. Meghan spun toward the producer. "Don't tell me to calm down. I am calm. I'm perfectly calm. What I am is done. I'm done with this charade. I'm done with people like her." She pointed at Joy again, pretending to care while secretly hoping I'll break down so they can get better ratings. Joy shook her head. "That's not what this is. That's never been what this is. But you're so wrapped up in your own narrative that you can't see reality anymore. You came here looking for a fight, and now you're upset that you got one." "I didn't come here looking for anything except maybe a shred of decency," Meghan shot back. "But I should have known better. I should have known that you'd turn this into exactly what you always do. A spectacle." The other co-hosts were standing now too. Everyone was on their feet. The energy in the room was electric, charged with anger and confusion and disbelief. The audience members looked at each other, unsure of what to do. Some were recording on their phones despite the no-phone policy. This was too big, too dramatic, too unbelievable not to capture. Joy took a step forward, not aggressive, but firm. "You need to go. Right now. This interview is over." Meghan's face contorted with rage and something else. Hurt, maybe. Or betrayal. "Fine, I'll leave. But everyone watching this needs to know the truth. They need to know what it's like to sit across from people who smile to your face while stabbing you in the back." "Nobody stabbed you in the back," Joy said, exasperated now. "We asked you basic questions. Normal questions. The same questions we ask every guest. You're the one who turned this into a confrontation." Meghan headed toward the exit, her heels clicking loudly on the studio floor. But she wasn't done yet. She stopped at the edge of the set and turned back one more time. You know what the saddest part is? You actually believe you're the good guy here. You actually think you did nothing wrong. That's how delusional people in your position become. Joy didn't respond to that. She just stood there, watching Meghan, waiting for her to finally leave. The silence stretched out, uncomfortable, painful. Everyone wanted this to be over, but Meghan seemed determined to have the last word. I hope you're happy, Meghan said, her voice dripping with bitterness. I hope you got exactly what you wanted out of this. Another viral moment. Another clip for social media. Another reason for people to talk about your show. All I wanted, Joy said slowly, was to have a respectful conversation. That's it. But you made that impossible from the moment you sat down. Meghan shook her head, a sad smile on her face now. You really don't get it, do you? You really have no idea what it's like to be on the other side of this. To be the one everyone feels entitled to judge and critique and tear apart? Then maybe, Joy said gently, surprising everyone with her sudden shift in tone, maybe you should think about why you keep putting yourself in these situations. Nobody forced you to be here. You chose this. You chose to come on television. You chose to live a public life. And with that choice comes responsibility, including the responsibility to treat people with basic human decency. That seemed to hit something in Meghan. For just a moment, her armor cracked. Her eyes glistened, but then she pulled herself together, straightening her spine and lifting her chin. Goodbye, Joy, she said coldly. I hope I never have to see you again. The feeling is mutual, Joy replied, just as coldly. And with that, Meghan finally walked off the set. Then the studio doors closed behind her with a heavy thud. The audience sat frozen. Nobody knew if they should clap or stay quiet. Nobody knew what the appropriate response was to what they'd just witnessed. Joy turned back to face the cameras. She looked tired, worn down, but also relieved that it was over. Her co-hosts gathered around her, offering support, checking if she was okay. She nodded, managing a small smile. Well, Joy said to the camera, her voice a bit shaky, but trying to inject some levity. That certainly didn't go as planned. A few nervous laughs rippled through the audience. The tension began to slowly dissipate, but the shock of what had just happened lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. We're going to take a quick break, Joy announced, and when we come back, we'll try to salvage what's left of this show. The cameras cut away. The lights dimmed slightly, and Joy sat back down in her chair, letting out a long exhale. Her co-hosts surrounded her, everyone talking at once, asking questions, expressing disbelief. But Joy just sat there, processing what had happened. She'd been in television for decades. She'd interviewed thousands of people. She'd seen arguments before. She'd seen guests get upset. But she'd never seen anything quite like this. Never seen someone come onto a show with such obvious hostility and then blame everyone else when things went wrong. The producers rushed over, headsets still on, clipboards in hand. They were already in damage control mode, already thinking about how to address this in the next segment, already wondering about the fallout. But Joy wasn't thinking about any of that yet. She was still trying to understand what had just happened. One of her co-hosts leaned in close. "Are you okay?" she whispered. Joy nodded. Yeah, I'm okay. Just, wow. That was insane, another co-host said. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Join the club, Joy muttered. The makeup artist hurried over to touch up Joy's face before they went back on air. Her hands worked quickly, dabbing powder, fixing lipstick, making sure everything looked perfect for the camera. But no amount of makeup could hide the exhaustion in Joy's eyes. 30 seconds, a producer called out. Joy straightened in her chair. She was a professional. She'd been doing this long enough to know how to compartmentalize. how to put on a brave face and push through. The show must go on. As they say, even when the show has just imploded in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. The lights came back up, the cameras focused, and Joy looked directly into the lens with a determination that showed she wasn't going to let this moment define her or her show. "We're back," she said, her voice stronger now. "And I think we all need a moment to process what just happened here." The audience murmured in agreement. Some people nodded. Others just stared, still in shock. "Look," Joy continued, "I've been doing this job for a long time. I've had tough interviews. I've had disagreements with guests. But I have never, and I mean never, been spoken to the way I was just spoken to on my own show." Her co-hosts nodded supportively. One of them reached over and squeezed Joy's hand. "I want to be very clear about something," Joy said, then looking directly at the camera. "We invited our guest here with nothing but respect and good intentions. We prepared thoughtful questions. We wanted to have a meaningful conversation. What happened instead was a complete breakdown of basic civility and respect." The audience applauded. It started small, just a few people, but it grew. It became louder and louder until the entire studio was clapping. They were showing their support for Joy, showing that they saw what had happened and they knew who was in the wrong. Joy smiled, genuinely touched by the response. "Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot." The applause faded, and Joy took a breath before continuing. "I think what we witnessed today is a perfect example of what happens when someone is so consumed by their own grievances that they can't engage in normal human interaction anymore. And that's sad. It's really, really sad." Her voice softened a bit, not in weakness, but in genuine compassion. Because despite everything that had just happened, Joy could still find it in herself to feel some empathy for someone clearly struggling. "I hope," Joy said carefully, "that our guest finds some peace. I hope she finds a way to work through whatever she's going through. Because that level of anger, that level of hostility, it's not healthy. It's not sustainable. And it's not fair to the people around her." More applause. The audience was fully on Joy's side now. They'd seen the whole thing unfold. They'd heard every word. And they knew that Joy had handled herself with grace and professionalism, even in the face of unrelenting hostility. "Now," Joy said, visibly trying to lighten the mood, "I think we could all use something a little less dramatic for the rest of the show. What do you say?" The audience laughed. Finally, some relief. Some release from the tension that had been suffocating the room. One of the co-hosts chimed in. "I vote for puppy videos. Just an hour of puppy videos." Everyone laughed again. The mood was shifting. Slowly but surely, the show was finding its footing again. But even as they moved on to other segments, even as they talked about lighter topics and tried to restore some normalcy, everyone in that studio knew they'd witnessed something extraordinary, something that would be talked about for years to come. Because what had happened wasn't just a disagreement or a tense interview. It was a complete meltdown, a total loss of control, and it had all been captured on live television for the world to see. Joy wrapped up the show with her usual closing remarks, thanking the audience and her co-hosts and everyone who made the show possible. But there was a heaviness to it, a weight that hadn't been there at the start of the day. When the cameras finally stopped rolling, when the lights dimmed, and the audience filed out, Joy sat in her chair for a long moment, just sitting, just breathing, processing everything that had happened. Her co-hosts stayed with her. They didn't push her to talk. They just stayed, present, supportive, because that's what you do when someone you care about has just been through something difficult. Eventually, Joy stood up. She gathered her things. She thanked her team, and she headed toward her dressing room, ready to leave this day behind. But she knew, even as she walked away, that this day would follow her, that this interview would be replayed and analyzed and discussed endlessly, that people would have opinions, strong opinions, about what happened and who was right and who was wrong, and Joy was okay with that, because she knew the truth. She knew she'd done nothing wrong. She knew she'd handled an impossible situation with as much grace and professionalism